Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University School of Education, SOE. Bachelor of Education, B.Ed. English. First year. Courses on Enhancing Professional Capacities, EPC. BESL 121 Reading and Reflecting on the Texts. Block-1 Understanding, Reading and Reflecting on the Texts. Unit 2 Reading for Text Comprehension. 2.1 Introduction. Often we would have begun reading a text and realized that we didn't understand what we were reading. So we reread the text and then sometimes we understood what was written, or we looked for assistance to help us understand what had been written. This process of understanding the read text and having an ability to extract relevant information from the text is called reading comprehension. As a teacher, it is essential to understand that reading comprehension is not just limited to English examinations where we attempt unseen passages, but reading comprehension is a skill that helps students across disciplines and age groups. In this unit, we will focus on strategies that will help build reading comprehension strategies in our students. 2.2 Objectives. After reading this unit, you should be able to times use the reading comprehension strategies to improve your students' skills. Times plan your classes to check the level of comprehension of a given topic in students, and times identify reading material that will develop critical thinking skills in your students. Across the curriculum. 2.3 Reading Comprehension, Meaning. Grabe and Stoller, 2002, very clearly say that no one process defines reading comprehension by itself, but together they provide a fairly accurate account of the processes required for fluent reading. Taking this idea further, Virvagu, et al. 2010, define reading comprehension as a thinking process by which a reader selects facts, information, or ideas from printed materials, determines the meanings the author intended to transmit, decides how they relate to previous knowledge, and judge their appropriateness and worth for meeting the learner's own objectives. The key points in this definition are: times reading comprehension is a thinking process. It means the reader and the text writer are actively involved with each other. Times reader selects facts. It means not all information given in the text is useful in a particular context. The reader therefore has to build a skill where she can identify relevant facts. Times determines meanings the author intended to transmit. It means the aim is to understand what the author's perspective on the topic is, especially true in case of reading comprehension passages in English where a reader is expected to interpret the writer's point of view. Times decide how it relates to previous knowledge. This is true especially when we read the texts in other subject disciplines and we try to understand what we have read and what we already know about the same topic. Doing this small exercise of asking oneself, how does this text relate to what I know, helps a reader form an important link between previous knowledge and the current concept. Often, if a reader realizes that she has read about this topic earlier but has little recollection of the concepts covered, it is a good practice to go back and revise that topic so that anything new that is read is understood. We now understand that reading comprehension is a purposeful exercise. Let us understand what all purposes comprehension of the text serves. 2.4 Aspects of reading comprehension. Way back in 1944, Frederick Davis identified basic skills or aspects that are covered in reading comprehension. These aspects also give a glimpse into the processes involved with reading comprehension. 1. Word meanings. The process of reading comprehension or comprehension of any text cannot take place until the reader is able to decipher the meaning of the words. For example, the following lines are from a story of Vikram and Betal. Once there was a king in the south who had lots of relatives. The relatives were always hungry after the throne. So once they usurped the throne, and The king had to flee the kingdom with his wife and daughter. They traveled through dense forests. In one area which was occupied by barbarians, he advised his wife and daughter to hide behind a bush while he fought the robbers, but died a tragic death. The queen and the daughter wept for their king. You would be aware of what the following words mean: usurp, flee, barbarians. If you think you don't know the meaning of these words, refer to the dictionary. This would be something that you would have often heard your own teachers tell you. But if someone were to ask you what happened in the story so far, you would be able to very easily tell them. This is power of comprehension. It allows you to understand the essence of the text even if you don't understand each word in it, but knowledge of what the words mean is also important. 2. Word meanings in context, the second aspect of reading comprehension. Detailed by Davis lays importance of knowing the meaning of the word in that context. Let us take a very interesting example to understand why it is important to know the meaning of the words in the context in which it is used. Where would you see this sign? At a doctor's clinic or a shoe repair shop? Or in front of a pastor's office? We will heal you. We will save your soul. We will even die for you. You would have noticed that the words in this context are homophones, words that sound the same but are spelled differently and have a different meaning. The above signage would be seen in front of a shoe repair store because you are talking of heel, sole and die, all related to shoes. And suppose if the same words were written as heel, sole and die, you could choose either the doctor's office or the pastor's office or police station. 3. Follow passage organization. Passage organization is commonly called text structure. Identifying the text structure helps a reader to plan how she would approach the text so that she is able to comprehend it completely. Generally, we often see cause and effect, problem solution, compare and contrast. Chronological, descriptive text structures. Boxes 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3 give samples of cause and effect, compare and contrast, problem solution passages respectively, taken from different sources. These articles are interesting reads in themselves. Try attempting the questions that follow each passage. Box 2.1, sample passage showing cause and effect. Attempt the question given after reading this passage. Answer can be found in the passage itself. Excerpt from Poverty in India, Causes, Effects, Injustice and Exclusion. From http://www. Poverties.org blog. Poverty in India. Despite the country's meteoric GDP growth rate, about 9%, poverty in India is still pervasive, especially in rural areas where 70% of India's 1.2 billion population live. It is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and yet its wealth is hardly redistributed across the population. It spends only 1% of its GDP on health, which is half that of China, who is already planning on increasing that by a substantial amount. While we are comparing public expenditure, contrast this with Russia and Brazil, whose spending on health is around 3.5% of their respective GDPs. India's government is well aware that poverty is a giant barrier to overcome if it is to fully develop the nation. A wide range of anti-poverty policies have been introduced since the 1950s, which nonetheless took effect after 20 years of implementation. If the decline in poverty went from 60% to 35% between the 1970s and the early 1990s, globalization and liberalization policies have made this trend go backwards in the 90s. How? And why? Weren't the effects of joining the global marketplace supposed to create growth? Why has India lagged behind China for so long? What went wrong? Poverty in India, the statistics. 50% of Indians don't have proper shelter. 70% don't have access to decent toilets, which inspires a multitude of bacteria to host their own disease party. 35% of households don't have a nearby water source. 85% of villages don't have a secondary school. How can this be the same? Government claiming 9% annual growth. Over 40% of these same villages don't have proper roads connecting them. Current estimations of the number of people below the poverty line vary from 20 to 50% of the population, from conservatives to liberals' estimations precisely because of the debate around the Indian poverty line. The idea is that recognizing either 240 million or 600 million poor means radically different policies for a government, so clearly the stakes are high for the parties representing richer segments of the population. A simple first step to improve the excessively low poverty line would be for India to base it on a nutritious food security line, and then include education, sanitation, permanent homes and so forth as part of the criteria. Prosperity sometimes begins with something small, but if a small business owner can't even protect his goods from going bad, shelter his stock from the elements or ensure their security, then how is he ever to generate a secure income or have long-term investment plans? Considering the size of India, poverty differs greatly from one state to another, so poverty lines should be adapted to each state as well as be updated regularly, considering the pace of economic growth in the country. The same goes of another tragedy that the country is infamous for: child labor in India. Solving this issue requires completely different approaches whether you are tackling it in towns, factories, or in rural areas, agriculture. As with many developing countries, urban poverty in India is a direct effect of rural migrations fleeing poverty. This creates a massive unemployment and underemployment issue but also a disproportionate housing problem. One of the few things that have helped with the housing shortage has been microfinance. At any rate, it has reduced uncertainties, though it's far from enough to solve the problem of poverty and interclass or caste marginalization and discrimination. The spectacular growth of cities has made poverty in India incomparably more visible and palpable through its famous slums. If, proportionally speaking, there are less urban poor nowadays, their sheer number has been increasing. They spend 80% of their income on food, and the waning of public services creates new unbearable costs that in the end lead to extreme situations where Indians are denied basic services they once were able to access easily. Getting used to selling your dignity for a rupee's work is one thing, and living on the edge of precariousness another. But witnessing the rest of the population reaping the benefits of formidable growth is probably the most dangerous and unstable feature of poverty in India. Since there are so many people working in agriculture and living in rural areas, the agricultural sector has, and should have, an unrivaled priority in policies aimed at poverty in India. And because there is a simple and straightforward link between rural poverty and agricultural productivity, the end goal is to raise the productivity per person in order to alleviate poverty. As a consequence, policies should focus on spurring investment and technological progress. 4. Identify the main idea. The main idea of the passage or a piece tells us about the author's thought process and perspective that was used in the article. 4. Example in the text that follows. The fact that electronic computers are now used for data processing has led the general public to believe that it is a mysterious, complicated science, and that the computers are giant brains. Both of these ideas are false. A computer is basically just a high-speed adding machine that performs the functions it is told to. If the input data are varied even a little, the computer is unable to operate until it is programmed to accept the variations. The Business operations it performs are impressive only because of the extremely high speed of manipulation, but most of these operations have been used for decades. Unlike human beings, the computer performs repetitive calculations without getting tired or bored. Source: Microsoft Word. Domain IDE revised 815.doc. The main idea of the passage is that computers are high-speed adding machine that performs the functions it is told to. 5. Answer specific text-based questions. It is expected that whenever we read any text we should be able to answer any question that is based on the text. These questions generally are direct questions and we often see them in our reading comprehension paragraphs in our English examinations for junior classes. Exercise 2.1. 6. Text-based questions with paraphrase. As the students move to higher classes, they have the ability to answer questions that are answered in a passage, but not in the words in which the question is asked. Exercise 2.1. 7. Draw inferences about content. Inference is the conclusion that one reaches based on one's reading. When we read a content, like that discussed in exercise 2.2, our inferences may vary but they will be correct if we are able to reach the conclusion based on evidence and reasoning. 8. Literary devices. Literary devices like similes, metaphors, analogies, etc. add to the beauty of the writing and make it more interesting. Identifying literary devices also help one to improve one's vocabulary and use of the language. 9. Author's purpose denotes the ability of the reader to determine a writer's purpose, intent and point of view. The author's purpose determines the main or central idea of the passage. Exercise 2.1. Many of us believe that small means insignificant. We believe that small actions and choices do not have much impact on our lives. We think that it is only the big things, the big actions and the big decisions that really count. But when you look at the lives of all great people, you will see that they built their character through small decisions, small choices and small actions that they performed every day. They transformed their lives through a step-by-step or day-by-day approach. They nurtured and nourished their good habits and chipped away at their bad habits, one step at a time. It was their small day-to-day decisions that added up to make a tremendous difference in the long run. Indeed, in matters of personal growth and character building, there is no such thing as an overnight success. Growth always occurs through a sequential series of stages. There is an organic process of growth. When we look at children growing up, we can see this process. At work, the child first learns to crawl, then to stand and walk, and finally to run. The same is true in the natural world. The soil must first be tilled, and then the seed must be sowed. Next, it must be nurtured with enough water and sunlight, and only then will it grow, bear fruit and finally ripen and be ready to eat. Mahatma Gandhi understood this organic process and used this universal law of nature to his benefit. He grew in small ways in his day-to-day affairs. He did not wake up one day and find himself to be the Mahatma. In fact, there was nothing much in his early life that showed signs of greatness. But from his mid-20s onwards, he deliberately and consistently attempted to change himself, reform himself, and grow in some small way every day. Day by day, hour by hour, he risked failure, experimented and learned from mistakes. In small and large situations alike, he took up rather than avoid responsibility. People have always marveled at the effortless way in which Gandhi could accomplish the most difficult tasks. He displayed a great deal of self-mastery and discipline that were amazing. These things did not come easily to him. Years of practice and disciplined training went into making his successes possible. Very few saw his struggles, fears, doubts and anxieties, or his inner efforts to overcome them. They saw the victory, but not the struggle. This is a common factor in the lives of all great people. They exercised their freedoms and choices in small ways that made a great impact on their lives and their environment. Each of their small decisions and actions added up to have a profound impact in the long run. By understanding this principle, we can move forward with confidence in the direction of our dreams. Often, when our ideal goal looks too far from us, we become easily discouraged, disheartened, and pessimistic. However, when we choose to grow in small ways, taking small steps one at a time, performing it becomes easy. From CBSE Sample Paper Class 12 2015. Based on the above text, answer the following questions. 1. What is the main idea of the first paragraph? 2. What does the writer mean by saying, chipped away at their bad habits? 3. Which of the following statements is true in the context of the third paragraph? A. Gandhi became great overnight. B. Gandhi showed signs of greatness in childhood itself. C. Everyday Gandhi made efforts to change himself in some small way. D. Gandhi never made mistakes. 4. What is done by great people to transform their lives? 5. How can we achieve our ideal goals? Box 2.2. Sample passage showing compare and contrast comprehension. Who wants to shop in a big box store anyways? From http://India. Blogs. Night Times. Com 2011-11-25. Who wants to shop in a big box store anyway? As foreign retail giants gear up to enter the Indian market after Thursday night's cabinet decision, discussion is already running hot. Opponents of big box retail have focused on the negative effect it may have on small shopkeepers, while supporters point to the benefits of a modern supply chain, which would make many industries, especially agriculture, more efficient and provide millions of jobs. But there is a more fundamental question that needs to be answered first. Will Indian shoppers take to big box stores? Let's compare the American big box shopping experience to shopping in urban India. In the United States, you usually start by getting in your car. You drive, sometimes for 30 minutes or more, and park in a lot the size of several football fields, braving whatever weather there is, to enter a warehouse-sized, climate-controlled cornucopia. Everything, from car air fresheners to jogging dresses to fresh peaches, under one roof. In India, in contrast, if you live in one of the urban, upper and middle class neighborhoods that will surely be prime targets for these big box retailers, almost everything you need already comes to you twice a day. In my South Delhi neighborhood, not one but two vegetable sellers walk the streets with carts like the farmers' markets that have become so popular in America in recent years. Their produce is seasonal, so they don't always have everything, but what they do have is very fresh. Besides the vegetable villas, daily retailers include the broom guy, the fruit woman, the milkman, the shoeshine guy, and the lady who picks up the ironing. Our neighborhood butcher delivers, as does the chemist, the grocer, and the bakery. We call, they come, and we pay cash. To buy appliances, you go to a market nearby, select your television or air conditioner, and it is delivered to your home, also payable with cash on delivery. Nearby popular markets are great places for clothing, and most shops will tailor-fit clothing after you buy.
Sometimes, there's not a whole lot of choice. You want butter or laundry detergent? You get just one or two brands. On trips back to United States or Britain, I can often be found, mouth agape, in the condiments aisle of a big box supermarket, trying to choose between 45 varieties of mayonnaise, or scratching my head, do I need it? For someone who has lived in India for 5 years, coming home to the staggering variety available in America's big stores is a great novelty. At least for the first few days. But, quickly, that novelty wears off, and shopping becomes a chore again. Will India's consumers feel the same, particularly when they already have what they need delivered quickly and effortlessly to their doors? After all, Indian-owned department stores already exist, but plenty of consumers still shop elsewhere or choose not to shop at all, sending their maid to get the groceries and other necessities. Retailers say that they're aware that they need to think differently here. It's clear that India will require an Indian model, said an owner of stores who already had many retail and wholesale stores in partnership with a multinational company. Indian shopping habits are different, our needs are different. Our real estate and location is challenging, he said. Big box retailers hoping to gain sizable market share here will need to offer substantially better prices and think creatively. 2. Appeal to India's upper middle classes, big box retailers may need to think upscale, providing an army of people to carry groceries to cars and even accompany customers to their homes to assemble their flat pack furniture. Like the fancy malls coming up in India's metropolises, these stores might want to add a room for their customers' drivers to hang out and have some chai while their employers are shopping. If you are going to sell clothes, you need an on-premises tailor. Yet to appeal to the lower to middle classes, folks who retailers promise will most benefit from the lower prices they'll offer, retailers will need to think in another direction. The cabinet decision Thursday confines foreign big box retailers to cities with over 1 million people, thanks to rising land prices and a recent building boom. These new multi-brand retail outlets are likely to be confined to the outskirts of those cities. Just 10 people out of every 1,000 own passenger cars in India, according to World Bank figures, or 1% of the population. Motorcycle ownership is much higher, but sky-high fuel costs here are likely to discourage shopping at a retail outlet that is miles away. Yes, here in India you probably can carry a new television on your motorbike, but why would you want to when you can get it delivered? Retailers may want to think about providing transportation, like free shuttle bus that goes from Port Authority on weekends, but on a regular basis. Or maybe they'll want to offer rebates to cover the cost of fuel. That doesn't factor in the time involved in one-stop destination shopping, traveling miles to shop, no matter how good the price is, might not make sense for anyone who is working 12 hours a day to support their family. Of course, retailers won't want to even think about making inroads in India without providing food. High-priced meals are not recommended, but the big retailer who sets up here without affordable, tasty snacks for its customers is not likely to last long. Bottom line for big box retailers, you won't succeed if you try to airlift a store from Bentonville to Gurgaon. Box 2.3, sample passage showing problem solution text comprehension. Attempt the questions given after reading this passage. Answers can be found in the passage itself. Excerpt from Social and National Integration. Social and national integration is a major problem which will have to be tackled on several fronts, including education. In our view, education can and should play a very significant role in it by times introducing a common school system of public education, times making social and national service an integral part of education at all stages, times developing all modern Indian languages, and taking necessary steps to enrich Hindi as quickly as possible so that it is able to function effectively as the official language of the Union, and times promoting national consciousness. We propose to discuss these briefly in the paragraphs that follow. The common school. In a situation of the type we have in India, it is the responsibility of the educational system to bring the different social classes and groups together and thus promote the emergence of an egalitarian and integrated society. But at present, instead of doing so, education itself is tending to increase social segregation and to perpetuate and widen class distinctions. At the primary stage, the free schools to which the masses send their children are maintained by government and local authorities and are generally of poor quality. Some of the private schools are on the whole definitely better, but since many of them charge high fees, they are availed of only by the middle and the higher classes. At the secondary stage, a large proportion of the good schools are private, but many of them also charge high fees which are normally beyond the means of any but the top 10% of the people, though some of the middle-class parents make great sacrifices to send their children to them. There is thus segregation in education itself, the minority of private, fee-charging, better schools meeting the needs of the upper classes and the vast bulk of free, publicly maintained, but poor schools being utilized by the rest. What is worse, this segregation is increasing and tending to widen the gulf between the classes and the masses. This is one of the major weaknesses of the existing educational system. Instead of trying to provide good education to all children, or at least to all the able children from every stratum of society, it is available to a small minority which is usually selected not on the basis of talent, but on the basis of its capacity to pay fees. The identification and development of the total national pool of ability is greatly hampered. The position is thus undemocratic and inconsistent with the ideal of an egalitarian society. The children of the masses are compelled to receive substandard education and, as the program of scholarships is not very large, sometimes even the ablest among them are unable to find access to such good schools as exist, while the economically privileged parents are able to buy good education for their children. This is bad not only for the children of the poor but also for the children from the rich and privileged groups. It gives them a short-term advantage insofar as it enables them to perpetuate and consolidate their position. But it must be realized that, in the long run, their self-interest lies in identifying themselves with the masses. By segregating their children, they prevent them from sharing the life and experiences of the children of the poor and coming into contact with the realities of life. In addition to weakening social cohesion, they also render the education of their own children anemic and incomplete. If these evils are to be eliminated and the educational system is to become a powerful instrument of national development in general and social and national integration in particular, we must move towards the goal of a common school system of public education. Times which will be open to all children irrespective of caste, creed, community, religion, economic conditions or social status. Times where access to good education will depend, not on wealth or class, but on talent. Times which will maintain adequate standards in all schools and provide at least a reasonable proportion of quality institutions. Times in which no tuition fee will be charged, and times which would meet the needs of the average parent so that he would not ordinarily feel the need to send his children to expensive schools outside the system. Social and national service. The present educational system, as we have mentioned earlier, is also responsible for increasing the deplorable gulf between the educated and the uneducated classes, between the intelligentsia and the masses. The intelligentsia should try to become a real service group striving to uplift the masses and resist the temptation to become a parasitical group living for itself and perpetuating its own privileged position. Our traditional elite as a whole, with some noble exceptions, had no close ties with the masses, and the new elite created by modern education also remained largely aloof from the people, except during the struggle for freedom under Mahatma Gandhi, when he was able to inspire large numbers of educated and even well-to-do persons to identify themselves with the interests of the masses and the country as a whole. But when the struggle for freedom came to an end with the attainment of independence, they have again tended to move away from the people. This is a great danger, and with a view to meeting it, suitable programs to help in the evolution of a well-knit and united nation have to be devised. For this purpose, we recommend that some form of social and national service should be made obligatory for all students and should form an integral part of education at all stages. This can become an instrument to build character, improve discipline, inculcate a faith in the dignity of manual labor, and develop a sense of social responsibility. 2.5 Reading Comprehension Strategies. There are basically 6 comprehension strategies that can help any reader improve her comprehension skills. Time Skill 1. Making connections. This is the most important comprehension strategy, as it helps the reader build on whatever previous knowledge she has about the topic. If she realizes that the previous knowledge on the topic is vague, it gives an opportunity to the reader go back and revisit the concepts to get clarity. Skill 2. Predicting. Often we use our skill of prediction for novels, TV serials, Bollywood movies, but we forget that in a text also it is very easy to predict what is to come. If one is able to correctly predict what follows, it shows that as a reader, you have grasped the main idea of the material and are able to follow the line of thought the author is using. Time Skill 3. Questioning. As a learner, you pose and answer questions that clarify meaning and promote deeper understanding of the text that you have read. These questions can either be generated by the reader, or your teacher, or the discussion group. Time Skill 4. Monitoring. This is a great tool that we see teachers use in all classes. When they ask their students, "Are you understanding? Am I clear? Should I repeat myself?" When a teacher asks such questions, she is monitoring your understanding and seeing how much you have comprehended. In the same manner, whenever we read a text, we should use questioning to monitor our own progress in understanding the text. Time Skill 5. Visualizing. Creating a mental image of what is being read is known as visualizing. Like, for example, while reading about any process in science, if a student is able to create a visual map about the sequence of events or about the process flow, then the student would easily comprehend the given text and be in a position to answer any question related to the text. Time Skill 6. Summarizing. Summarizing is another very helpful comprehension strategy that helps the reader revise all what was read and see if any points were missed. Once a student is able to summarize the main points about a topic in her own words, chances are she has fully grasped the concept and can move ahead and tackle higher order questions related to that topic. 2.6 Critical thinking using reading comprehension questions across the curriculum. Low and Chen, 2014, define critical thinking as the ability to think clearly and rationally about what to do or what to believe. It includes the ability to engage in reflective and independent thinking. They say that someone with critical thinking skills is able to do the following. Times understand the logical connections between ideas. Times identify, construct, and evaluate arguments. Times detect inconsistencies and common mistakes in reasoning. Times solve problems systematically. Times identify the relevance and importance of ideas, and times reflect on the justification of one's own beliefs and values. Halpern, 1996, talks about critical thinking as the use of those cognitive skills or strategies that increase the probability of a desirable outcome, thinking that is purposeful, reasoned, and goal-directed, the kind of thinking involved in solving problems, formulating inferences, calculating likelihoods, and making decisions when the thinker is using skills that are thoughtful and effective for the particular context and type of thinking task. While we read, we automatically think about what we are reading if we are able to comprehend the text correctly. It therefore wouldn't be wrong to say that if a reader is able to think about the text that she has read, she has comprehended the text. As a reader, you would have also experienced that as you broaden your horizon, go higher in your learning grades, what you read is not applicable to only one dimension of the curriculum. Many things that you read and understand are applicable across the curriculum. Exercise 2.2. The importance of art in education is discussed in http://www. Insert NIC. In departments. Need a publication print PDF1.pdf. What is art? It is the response of an individual's creative soul to the call of the real. With such words from Tagore, art assumes an exalted role from the metaphysical to the sublime and eventually, the spiritual. According to another educationist, Devi Prasad, planning for education requires, among other things, many serious considerations, primarily aiming at preparing the individual to become an integral part of the value system the society has built over a long period for the behavioral pattern of its members. These values and the manner in which they are interpreted and practiced represent the ideals and the cultural characteristics of that society. The arts are, above all, the special language of children who, even before they learn to speak, respond intuitively to dance, music, and color, stated Dr. Ernest Boyer, former U.S. Commissioner of Education and President of the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. For many people, true fulfillment is closely linked with finding an early path towards excellence. It does not matter whether one's early interest develops into an adult career. What matters is that every child goes through a joyful and meaningful experience that instills self-confidence and self-worth. For some children, excellence may manifest itself on the athletic fields. For others, it will come in the class spelling bee, but for many children, fulfillment comes on the stage, at the piano or with a paintbrush in hand. Art is not a subject alien to mankind and brings into its gamut an array of art forms ranging from performing, visual, literature and crafts. Since each existing culture has unique artistic expressions and cultural practices, the diversity of their creative, artistic and practical prospects represents contemporary and traditional forms of human creativity. Subsequently, its study uniquely contributes to the nobility, heritage, beauty and integrity of human civilizations. Awareness and knowledge of cultural practices through art forms go on to strengthen personal and collective identities and values, and thus contributes to safeguarding and promoting cultural diversity. Even when India gained independence, several of her leaders formulated policies and regulations that only strengthened the Indian belief of advancement without compromising on their ideals. Our father of the nation Mahatma Gandhi's words echoed a very progressive and all-encompassing approach to life. I do not want my house to be rounded by walls and my windows to be closed to other cultures. I wish to become familiar with the culture of lands as much as possible, but I will not permit them to affect me or shake me from my own status. Thus, in their overall methodology to go ahead while imbibing all that seemed relevant to a developing nation like India, abundant policies were framed keeping in mind the Indian social fabric and its relevance. At this point, art remained the fulcrum around which all subjects revolved. As a holistic guiding principle along the course of action, it helped immensely to devise plans and objectives for the complete development and evolution of man. It helped create a blissful environment in which a child participated in many artistic activities central to education. As the child began to question, and the reasoning powers sharpened, learning about the fine arts improved individual perception of the arts largely at the Same time, learning many other subjects with the help of the medium of arts made the child more and more aware of the significance of the arts. Art is a lifelong meditation and not a hobby, said another internationally renowned Indian painter Nandalal Bose. Does art then require a full-length course as a subject that could be taught as a classroom lecture? Is it essential to include it in the curriculum or integrate learning with arts? Yes, it surely does. Education ought to inculcate a deep sense of discretion and a feeling of self-respect and freedom in the individual to be able to think independently and make choices. It has to aim at preparing the individual to become an integral part of the value system the society has built over a long period for the behavioral pattern of its members. These values and the manner in which they are interpreted and practiced represent the ideals and the cultural characteristics of that society. At the same time, it cannot be overemphasized under any circumstances as a process of molding personalities, not even to force or coax one to fall in line with the established norms of society. Education deals with human nature, which has its own potential and pace of growth. Its objective is not to mold, but to facilitate the individual to grow and develop into a creative and productive citizen. The aim is to make an individual free to make his or her own choices in life and grow holistically. In other words, education in general and art education in particular is a way for one to grow and become sensitive to the beauty in nature, of social values and the aesthetic aspects of life as a whole. In art education, training of the hand and body to develop skills is only an objective to build a creative, fulfilled and balanced personality. Arts would have continued to play an important part of our education all along. But with the changing times and during the 90s in particular, India witnessed a revolution as a result of the after effects of globalization, and arts experienced a fresh lease of life with the advent of technology. After remaining secluded from the development that took place in other countries, when the process of liberalization started, art education to demanded a drastic pedagogic approach. As the entire universe got closer, India too in its lateral thinking blended its combined creative forces with the changing circumstances. Accordingly, efforts continue to be made to help technology reach the remotest corners of this vast country, where the role of computers and modern gadgets being as much in use in rural areas as they are in the urban regions. 2.7 Summary. Let us go over some of the concepts we have studied. Times Virvago, et al. 2010 defined reading comprehension as a thinking process by which a reader selects facts, information, or ideas from printed materials, determines the meanings the author intended to transmit, decide how they relate to previous knowledge, and judge their appropriateness and worth for meeting the learner's own objectives. Times reading comprehension has 9 aspects according to Davis, 1944. Knowledge of words, ability to select the appropriate meaning for a word or phrase in the light of its particular contextual setting, ability to follow the organization of a passage, ability to select the main thought idea of the passage, ability to answer questions that are specifically answered in a passage, ability to answer questions that are answered in the passage but not in the words in which the question is asked, ability to draw inferences from a passage about its contents, ability to recognize the literary devices used in the passage, and finally the ability to determine a writer's purpose, intent and point of view. Times 6 comprehension strategies that can help any reader improve her comprehension skills are making connections, predicting, questioning, monitoring, visualizing and summarizing. Times critical thinking skills like making logical connections between ideas, identifying, constructing and evaluating arguments, solving problems systematically, identifying the relevance and importance of ideas to help understand the text in a better manner and are often used when we read articles or texts that transcend across the curriculum. Thank you for listening. We will be back with next chapter.